Halo cover art tier list. We're really interested in taking a closer look at the different cover arts that's been used over the years across Halo, as they have some pretty interesting details and art styles that were used to represent the game itself. And some of them are absolutely amazing, and other ones don't really hold up in comparison. So this one will be really interesting. But before we get into the rest of the video, we want to give a huge shout out to Frag Pro Shooter for sponsoring this video. Frag Pro Shooter is one of the best shooter games on mobile with unique gameplay and a community of over 100 million players. If you don't know Frag yet, it is one of the most interesting shooters out there with unique 1v1 gameplay. There are 100 characters available to play that let you build your own dream team of 5 and come up with your own strategies and techniques. Basically, you jump into a game with your team, you manage 5 characters, and the person to first destroy the enemy tower wins. Now you might be wondering what those characters play like. For example, some of the most popular characters are Ronin and Zap Girl. Ronin does a ton of damage with quick shots and fast recharging time, while Zap Girl often does more AoE damage with her abilities. And of course, they wanted to hook our viewers up with some rewards, so if you go ahead and click the link in the description down below or scan the QR code on the screen and download Frag, you get 1 golden chest, 5,000 coins, 200 diamonds, and a special offer gift worth $10. Remember, sponsors like this help Luke and I make content, so just by taking a minute to check out the game, it does help us out a lot. Alright, let's go ahead and get back into it. Okay, so to start things off, we took a look at Halo Combat Evolved, and ultimately there was something really special about the essence and aesthetic that went into the Combat Evolved cover. We see that we're on a ring, and we get to play as this sci-fi looking cyborg guy. It captures the idea of what Halo is about in a pretty cool way. We see some Banshees, even though it looks like there's no pilot in this one for whatever reason, but it's a really good base starting line for this tier list when we're looking into the cover art that went into each Halo game. Though we do know what type of cover art we are going to be going into as we move forward, and we have stronger opinions on some other cover art as we get to them. So to start out for now, when we're making this list, we're gonna put Combat Evolved right there at B tier, because we do think that there's some instances where cover art goes above and beyond. This cover art definitely isn't bad by any means, so B tier seems the most fitting. Then on the flip side of things, if you look at the cover art for Halo Combat Evolved that released in Japan, it actually looks quite a bit different. Some art that isn't necessarily as recognizable as the original Combat Evolved art that we saw here in North America, though it is really cool to look at this version as they thought that this would work better in Japanese markets. It's definitely more science fiction-y looking and more techno almost, dare I say, but at the same time, I like it in its own unique way. I can't make the argument that this cover art specifically is better than Combat Evolved, and we also don't think it's worse. Well, maybe Dim thought it was worse, but Luke and I thought it was pretty much the same or on par, so we're gonna put this one also in B tier with the original Combat Evolved because it's special in its own way. Now, like we said, when we were going through Combat Evolved, we knew there were some box arts that we liked better than CE right away before even looking at all of the art for this video, and Halo 2 was one that definitely came to mind. And with Halo 2, it wasn't really difficult for us to want to put this one right up at S tier because it's just pinnacle Master Chief. We get him in a cool pose, he's holding 2 SMGs, the background looks cool, the color looks unique and different than the first Halo. And there's definitely something really special about Halo 2's box art that just looks so memorable and cool at the same time. I just can imagine a lot of people being really excited when Halo 2 came out and staring at this art for so long on websites waiting for Halo 2's release. I bet a lot of people really are fond of this art. It rightfully earns that fondness because it's a really cool piece of art at the same time. So Halo 2 earns its spot at S tier without any real competition. Though, if we look at Halo 2 some more, there's one other art piece that often gets overlooked when it comes to cover art, and it's the Halo 2 multiplayer DLC, which did in fact release in retail in stores. It's great for all of the same reasons that the original Halo 2 one was. I mean, the cool SMG dual wield pose, but this time around it's a cover art that's more centered around the multiplayer experience, and it's really cool in its own right. We got this Spartan in the background holding the flag, which I really like, and it just feels just as epic but also different than the Halo 2 one, that we think it also is deserving of the S tier. Personally, I like this one more, and Luke liked the original Halo 2 one more, but they're both really great, so S tier seemed the most deserving. Okay, then there was those Halo 2 limited edition box arts, which were really a big deal back in the day, and a lot of us have those really awesome tin cases that were just special and silver and shiny, and it showed that there was something significant about Halo 2 when you got the limited edition box. Now, this isn't necessarily a review on the way that the presentation behind Halo 2's box was given out. It's more on the actual art that exists in the cover art. These art pieces on the tin cases are pretty basic. They're not too advanced or necessarily even really the same category of an art piece. It's just a logo, really. So from an art standpoint, not a lot going on, pretty minimalistic, but still kind of cool with just the silver background. But yeah, the presentation was definitely the highlight, and the art itself was kind of non-existent. It also came in the weird sleeve thing, so they could put the Xbox branding over it, which was a little weird. So like we said, the presentation itself, pretty cool. It would go higher on the list if it wasn't just based off of the cover art itself. So we're gonna go ahead and put the Halo 2 limited edition in D tier, though the Japanese limited edition slightly cooler because it does say Halo 2 on it, and for that reason we're willing to bump that version up to C tier. So this is probably one of the more controversial picks, but like we said, it's strictly focused on the cover art, not necessarily the presentation, which was cool in its own right. Also, there was this really cool Halo 2 alternate cover art that was released through some magazine or something, but it never actually was retail, and it's just kind of neat to look at. It's a little scuffed in some ways in the cropping of the Arbiter, but it is cool to see an Arbiter-centric box art all the way back for Halo 2. We're not going to place it in the tier list because it's not really at the same level. It wasn't a retail product, but it's still kind of cool to look at. Then also, we wanted to make a quick side note as we're going to start going into all these different editions of Halo games. Any type of Halo game that has the over-the-top platinum hits branding, or like game of the year version that has the same art but just like with stickers over it or some weird border, we're not too fond of those. In general, we like the original way that the game was presented better than some extra branding, so those automatically get F tier for us. However, if there is an instance where a special edition of the game or an alternate edition of the game has different art, we will review that on its own rather than try to just dump it in F tier with the rest of the platinum hits over the top branding from the mid 2000s. When it comes to Halo 3, there is a lot to like, and I think this one also will be a fan favorite. Just the coloration of it is cool. Master Chief looks cool, though Halo 3, for it being the triumphant conclusion to the Halo trilogy, it's maybe not as over-the-top epic as the Halo 2 one looked. So while it's still a great piece of art, we, in our opinion, feel a little bit better about Halo 2 staying up there in that S tier. So Halo 3 kind of fits in nicely in A tier, and actually putting this here in A tier made us feel more confident about how we felt towards Combat Evolved being just one tier lower and Halo 2 being one tier higher. Then we can look to the limited edition version of Halo 3, which is very similar in a way to the Steelbook Halo 2 one. Very simple and minimalistic, though we do have more coloration and a cloud, and at least this time around it's an actual design. So we are going to bump this one tier higher than where we put Japanese Halo 2 over in B tier, and yeah, we're feeling pretty good about how we had placed out everything in our tier list so far. Also, the Legendary Edition had the Halo 3 cover art, but darker and more black and white with just Halo 3, which is really cool, and it's a neat way to present it, but in general, we always kind of like the classic Halo 3 cover art more than this one, so we're just going to put it down in B tier. After the release of Halo 3, we started to see Halo pop up in new and unique ways. Halo Wars was an interesting example of this, where we saw Halo take on a more strategic type game, where for the first time ever, Halo was now an RTS game. Now, I'll be honest, I've tried Halo Wars on and off multiple times over the years, and I can't just get into the gameplay itself. I'm just so used to the first-person shooter style of Halo. In general, RTS games aren't really my thing. But that box art always makes me want to come back and give Halo Wars another try. And Luke pointed this out, that it just looks larger than life with the army in the background and these Spartans, and I really like the way the visor lasers look in the cover art. It's a pretty cool piece of art, and I feel like a lot of people maybe picked up Halo Wars back then just because of how cool the cover art ended up looking. So we feel really good about putting this one here at A tier. But then there's the special edition Halo Wars one, which took things a step further, and this time we see a cover art in an alternative form with the Arbiter at the time at the front. And this is just so cool. It takes everything that's cool about the first one and steps it up a notch. So it really wasn't much discussion where we're like, yeah, this one's gonna go up there in S tier also, and it's pretty deserving of it. We definitely feel that it does deserve to be in this upper echelon of Halo cover arts. Okay, when it came to ODST, there was definitely a more split opinion between us and our chat when we were streaming, us putting this together on twitch.tv/RocketSloth, which we finally got the Twitch name Rocket Sloth we're really excited about. So I really went up to bat to really sell why I thought ODST was one of the best cover arts that we've seen out of the Halo art so far. And it did take some convincing to Luke here, but essentially I felt like ODST is a great example of how the box art perfectly displays the ambiance, the mood, and just the different feeling that ODST has compared to the rest of the Halo franchise. It utilizes these blue, rainy, moody colors, and it just so perfectly lines up with the aesthetic that's present throughout all of ODST's campaign. It really is a special piece of art. Also, this time around, we see the rookie in the cover art and not just the Master Chief like we're used to. And for the story that it tells and just the feeling that goes with it, the vibe, it just seems so perfectly fitting as a representation as to what you get when you play this game. That's something we really appreciated. So even when some people didn't think ODST was as deserving, we were pretty content putting this one up here in S tier for those very specific reasons. And I think the fact that we pointed out those sentiments ended up also kind of influencing our conversation moving forward when we got to Halo Reach, because during this time in the Halo franchise, it seemed like in general there was a lot of game franchises going for this ultra minimalistic aesthetic, this black and white mixture in a lot of games cover arts in the early 2010s, and there is something really special about ODST's color choices and how it reflected the game, and I think the same mindset was used when approaching Halo Reach's box art, as Halo Reach has this really gritty design that perfectly reflects what Halo Reach is about, especially in the way that it shows Noble Team. The first instance where we see multiple Spartans together in a game, we get to see it at the same time on a box art, but with the newer art style that Halo Reach used in its approach. Luke pointed out that this felt like it was a perfect representation of what Reach was about. It's this team of Spartans against the odds. It's the introduction of a new story, but it still has this ominous ending with the color choices used in the clouds. I don't know, it's just pretty cool. When it got time to talk about Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, we were a little bit conflicted with how to even approach this, because it is quite a bit different from the original Combat Evolved, but it does have this sleek, minimalistic style to it that is a bit unique and different from anything we had seen so far. And ultimately, while we do like a lot of the little subtle callbacks to Combat Evolved, we kind of generally felt like the artwork itself is what's great about it, and maybe it would have fit better in a different Halo project than a Combat Evolved remaster or whatever this is exactly. But at the same time, the art piece itself is really cool. So that's what we're focusing on judging this off of. So we felt pretty confident looking at where we have our tier list set up so far to put this one in A tier, even if it's maybe not the most reflective of what Combat Evolved's gameplay itself was like. It's still a cool piece of art, and if that's what we're judging it on, it's definitely deserving of A tier. Okay, so when it came to Halo 4, things were literally all over the place. We have a lot to look at and a lot of varying opinions, so we tried to move quickly, but we also were pretty confident that we needed to kind of take a closer look and make sure we were judging these correctly. So when it came to the base Halo 4 regular retail release, this cover art, despite our criticisms we've done in the past of Halo 4's art style, and despite all of that, it's pretty badass. Like, just straight up, it looks really cool, and I think a lot of us back in the day were so hyped when this was revealed to be the cover art for Halo 4, just because it's just really upping the ante to what we had seen from Halo in the past. And because of that, the base version of Halo 4 really does deserve the S tier placement. However, not so much can be said about some of the other versions that Halo 4 also had, like the Game of the Year version. version, which is just this very close-up of Master Chief's visor with the didact ball being reflected. I don't know. We didn't really understand what was going on, and if you just look at the tier list so far and you compare this to everything else, there's nothing overtly special about it. So we felt better putting this one down here in the C tier because there's just nothing really exceptionally wowing, especially when it's such a step down from what the base version of Halo 4 literally was, which was really cool. Okay, then there were 2 different steelbooks for Halo 4 released in different editions, and pretty much these are kind of really boring. Luke pointed out that they kind of look like something you would keep your taxes in, not necessarily a Halo game, so we're not a fan of either of these, but the silver one kind of a bit worse, so we wanted to put that one down in F tier because we're not happy about it, and the white one is a little bit cooler. We would put that one up in D tier just to differentiate the silver and the white one. Then there was this exclusive steelbook that only released in like a specific store in Canada or something, and it has this art of Master Chief on it, and it is a better steelbook than the other steelbooks, but it does have this render of Master Chief that we're not huge fans of. Personally, I feel like it just looks like someone looking somewhat like Master Chief but wearing a motorcycle helmet, and Luke says it looks like Master Chief got left behind and not picked up at school by his parents, and he's mad about it, like he got forgotten about at school or something. I don't know. C tier? Yeah, C tier. So when it comes to Halo Spartan Assault and Halo Spartan Strike, immediately we're not the biggest fans of these. They kind of look like those old Call of Duty covers that we had back in the day that still didn't even quite make sense. Like especially the Call of Duty 3 one. Like who's he shooting at? I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Yeah, I don't know. Spartan Assault and Spartan Strike, these both are kind of weird. They're okay. They're not like the worst thing we've ever seen, but they're definitely not amazing either. We decided to put them in D tier. So next we were looking at the Master Chief Collection, this big game that's supposed to be like the most hype moment for the Halo community, getting all of these Halo games on one game. It was a really big deal, and I always was kind of underwhelmed by the artwork that they ended up choosing. We had Master Chief's helmet and then just like the shadows of cover art in the background, which is okay. It's not a bad cover art, but they could have done something much cooler. I feel like they could have utilized the art in the background more and made something more special and limited feeling, and instead it just kind of was this thing. So it's not the worst, but it's also not the best. So we felt like it could sit in B tier just for the fact that it still represents the games in it through the background shadowy area. Then with the updated version, when Halo Reach came to PC, we got Master Chief's helmet now green, and the games in the background are represented and updated to have Reach and ODST, which is cool, but still they kind of stuck to their guns that was going to be the cover art, and they could have just done something so much bigger and better, and they kind of played it safe. So we're going to put this one in B tier. But then we got to talking about how we felt about our tier list so far, and while we feel pretty good about everything we've put in B tier, the one in this tier section that kind of stands out that's still very clearly a cut above them is Combat Evolved. And since Combat Evolved was the first one we placed without really having anything to compare it to since we started there, we feel like it was deserving of a bump up on our tier list. So at this point, we retroactively moved it from B tier up to A tier because it does still stand a cut above the rest of them that we're ranking in here at B tier. Japanese Combat Evolved was very close to also getting the bump, but it just barely wasn't quite as iconic as the original. So we're going to keep it down here at B tier.
Okay, so I just realized we skipped over 2 or 3 cover arts here real quick in the audio when we recorded this because we're doing it live, so it was, I guess, kind of chaotic. But we rated the Halo 2A cover art, which like got its own release with the Steam version and stuff, so it got a cover. We rated that one S tier. It just looks cool. It just looks like the Halo 2 one, just like different colors slightly, but still has the city in the background and everything. We like it a lot, so S tier. And then we skipped over Halo 5. Can you blame us? The base cover for Halo 5 gets B tier. It's not that exciting, but it's still kind of cool. Also, I always wondered, what is that city on the cover? We never like go there, I think, in the campaign. Maybe I'm wrong. But B tier it is. And then D tier for the Halo 5 Guardians Steelbook, which is another one of those document holders for some reason. It doesn't excite me to buy a document holder. Also, the sleeve has those dumb honeycombs on it, and it just like says Halo 5 Guardians on it. There really isn't anything special. D tier for that one.
Okay, the most contentious cover art we ran into, though, by far was Halo Wars 2. Halo Wars 2, besides the fact that it has this special edition, which has this red in the background, which I'm a fan of, though Luke and dim, not so much. And then the base version, which we all agree is pretty cool. Now, the real debate was whether or not this base version of the game is deserving of going up in S tier alongside these masterpieces. It was kind of back and forth where we felt about it, because we did acknowledge it's pretty awesome art, though we couldn't quite definitively feel comfortable putting it in S tier, but then also we felt like A tier was a little too low. If there was an in-between tier, it would go there. At the end of the day, we decided to run a poll on our Twitch stream to the people who were watching us put together this list and see where the chat ended up landing, because we were just so divided and unsure where this is deserving. So leave a comment with where you would have put it if you were making your own tier list. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we ran the poll, the results ended up being 43%, 6-6 each, and then some people did throwaway votes, so it didn't count. So we had a dead tie with the 12 people that did vote amongst 54 people watching us while we were streaming at 3:42 in the morning. So this became a little bit more complicated. So at almost 4 in the morning, what were we supposed to do? Well, we ended up looking through other Twitch streamers streaming Halo the Master Chief Collection, and we found this guy, Mikusa, who was playing Halo 2 Anniversary Campaign for the first time, and we asked him in his chat, and he said it was S tier. So S tier. Then there's this really awesome steel book that was available at EB Games. We didn't even know this one existed, but it's really cool looking, and Dim was kind of mad that he didn't end up getting that one. We decided to go ahead and throw this one up in S tier. For Halo Infinite, though, we felt more confident in our decisions on this one. We were pretty big fans of Halo Infinite's cover art. It's simple, but it represents the game pretty well. It might not be as action-packed as some of the other ones, but it's a really good design, so we felt comfortable putting it at A tier. Now, when it comes to the Steelbook, on the other hand, our opinion was a little bit different. We felt like they could have done a little more with the Steelbook, especially because it's just zoomed in on Master Chief, and then you don't even have the Halo ring in the background, as it's delegated to the backside of the Steelbook. But for the sake of this video, we only were looking at the front covers, not including the back. So because of that, it's just a less exciting version of the Halo Infinite cover. So we're gonna bump it down 1 point. Maybe they could have done a different pose or something for the Steelbook. B tier's not bad, and I think that that's a fair placement for it, especially considering how much better the main one actually looks. So this is our tier list at the end of the day, and ultimately we feel pretty good about this. The little shifts that we made, moving CE up, definitely balanced the whole thing out, and while some of them could still be up for debate, we generally feel pretty good about this. But if you disagree with us, let us know your thoughts in the comments, because we'd like to have a discussion to see where your opinion comes from. Also, you can check out our Twitch if you want to join in on stuff like this at twitch.tv/RocketSloth. It'd be really cool if we could get a couple more followers over there to hang out whenever we stream. All right, we'll see you all next time with a brand new video.